Hello everybody, my name is Rojo, and I enjoy a good point-and-click adventure from time to time, but then again, I also do quite like a good action RPG. Well, luckily, I happen to have a game called Shadowrun for the SNES, which combines both genres in a pretty interesting and fun way, I would say. Now, when you hear Shadowrun, many people might be familiar with the recent-ish harebrained schemes, story-driven tactics games that are set in the Shadowrun universe. But actually, the whole setting, as far as I know anyway, got started as a pencil and paper game. And if you're not familiar with Shadowrun at all, it's sort of like a cyberpunk fantasy setting, set in the somewhat near future at this point, the time of this recording. I think around 2050, something like that. Depending on maybe what edition of the game you're playing. Because the second edition cover here is quite old at this point, I would say. But, the second edition cover here does kind of say it all. You got guns, you got a big city, technology, and magic. As I said, it is partially a fantasy setting. So you've got like trolls and elves and dragons and magicians and all kinds of other stuff like that. Speaking of covers, I kind of feel like we got screwed a little bit here in North America. If you look at the European version or the Japanese version, it looks, it's exciting, it's colorful, it's interesting. But then you look at the North American version and we got like a white background with a logo on it. It tells me nothing about the game whatsoever, really. But, it's pretty much the same game either way. I think there's like a couple minor translation / censorship things, which if I remember I'll try to point out, but it's nothing huge, and I can't confirm the censorship things anyway. It's just what I've read from doing research on the game, because I only have this version of the game, never played the other ones. The game was released in 1993 and created by a company called Beam Software, and as far as I know, this was actually the first ever Shadowrun video game. There was also a Genesis game, which is quite different, that came out in 94, and a Sega CD game, which is, again, way different, that came out sometime after that, I believe. And then, of course, there's been the PC games and all that good stuff. But the Super Nintendo game was my introduction to the entire Shadowrun franchise. Aside from that, this game was apparently a sort of spiritual, or at least it's considered to be a sort of spiritual successor to the otherwise, as far as I know, unrelated Nightshade for the NES, which is made by the same developers. I've never played it, so I can't really confirm that, but it does sound like an interesting game. I'd like to play it someday if I can get my hands on an actual physical copy of it. As far as a little bit of technical discussion goes, we will be playing on a physical cartridge, which you saw, and my actual Super Nintendo. So it's all going to be played on original hardware through an upscaler, which will be we'll be looking at a 5x upscale, essentially. Normally, a little bit of the screen would get cut off, but as you'll see, the game actually fits quite nicely on the screen, on a 1080p screen with a 5x upscale. So without further ado, let's take a look at the, I guess, sort of intro stuff to the game here, which begins with some very exciting text, which I will try to spice up a little bit here. The year is 2050, and the megaplexes are monsters casting long shadows. When you become a Shadowrunner, that's where you live, in the cracks between the giant corporate structures. It's also very exciting, the drama, the intrigue. Are you excited yet? Let's continue. The megacorps are powerful in a time when power means information. Computer information flowing in the global network called the Matrix? That Matrix? This Matrix? No, not exactly. Suffice to say that you can hack and do all kinds of stuff in the Matrix. There's like alternate realities that you can, like almost like virtual reality, I guess, that you can do. Can't remember what they're called. It's sort of like a drug thing, almost. People get addicted to them and want to stay in there forever. And there's probably a ton of other stuff that I don't even know about that involves the Matrix and all that good stuff. But that's sort of the gist. Well, as you can see here, the first little cutscene of the game Begins with a overlook of a rather sort of generic-looking city. Oh wait, it's Seattle because there's the Space Needle, and that's sort of the core setting, I think, of the Shadowrun pencil and paper books. Is near future Seattle. Alrighty, there's one other little cutscene that plays if you let the main menu sit for a little while, so I'm going to go ahead and show you that real quick. Oh, well, would you look at that? Some poor bastard got gunned down in the street. What the hell does that have to do with anything? Well, let's begin the game and see if we can find out. Oh, well, it turns out that poor bastard in the street was us. Who could have predicted such an outcome? And on top of that, thanks to the clutch heal from the dog lady, we were only mostly dead. So, aside from getting shot in the amnesia, we're off to a great start.